I would say that in Mishcon de Reya, he really does have first-class legal representation.
Yes.
And it's glad that you flag it up as a PR exercise, because I'm afraid lawyers now are far from just in the courtroom, and they will be liaising with PR experts. They will be liaising with all types of people. There will be media strategy meetings. There will be a plan. There will be a management going on. But ultimately, even the brilliance that is Mishcon de Reya is going to crash into reality at some point, and let's see when and if that comes. This story is just pathetic. And I think what it does is it's designed clearly to put pressure on the police. And I hope the police ignore it. And I hope the police hear the good voices of support from the general public, that they should simply plow head on, without fear or favour. Still presume innocence. We're never, ever, ever giving up the presumption of innocence. Ever, 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 ever. But do your job and investigate this man, no matter what he says, no matter the silly tales he comes out with. It's one of the Labours of Hercules, where he had to fight a shapeshifter who just kept changing form in order to try and get away from Hercules.
Yes.
And all Hercules had to do was to keep holding on to this thing, no matter what it turned into. And so no matter what Mandelson turns into, justice must we pursue. And that he still may be innocent. I genuinely will not give up the presumption of innocence for anybody. So let's just pursue justice, and let the police know that we've got their back. So no matter what this man says during the process is irrelevant. Let's just ignore him. Don't give him any credibility. And no, it's a personal question of morality, whether you trust Peter Mandelson or not. And I don't trust him.
No, and you're quite right not to trust him. And I find the media's coverage of this story to be completely and utterly banal and without any sort of curiosity at all. Curiosity is a word I like to use a lot when it comes to the way that journalism is now practiced, because nobody's curious. The Times, what used to be known as the Thunderer, the establishment newspaper, which is so far up Keir Starmer's arse that you could literally pull out page 3 from his buttocks. It says, Mandelson flight risk fiction led to my arrest, as if it's a true story, right? They even quote inside the story a spokesman for the Lord Speaker, Lord Forsyth of Drumlean, who says Mandelson's claim that he had spoken to Scotland Yard was, in his words, entirely false and without foundation. So why are you running it then? Why are you running it as if it's a true story? And then they quote Mandelson saying that, his plan to go to the Virgin Islands couldn't possibly be true because he would not leave Ronaldo, his husband, he wouldn't leave his family home, and he wouldn't leave his dog, Jock, behind him. I mean, it's just nonsense. And I can't believe that this is the pettiness and the most ridiculousness of our media now. If the Times, supposedly one of the most serious newspapers in the world, can cover this story on its front page as its main story, it's really, really pathetic, isn't it?
It is absolutely pathetic, but I think we have all sadly come to the conclusion that the mainstream media is very largely captured.
Yeah.
That it's run not by fierce independent journalists, but by compliance departments who are more worried about upsetting government or upsetting the woke message. True. Or stepping out of line on something than they are about informing the public. And very sorry to say that, Mike, but that's why shows like yours are necessary. That's why the independent media has arisen. We should thank goodness that we live in a world in which that's been possible.
Yeah.
When I was a child, it wouldn't have been possible. So had the media have been captured back then, we'd be in a much worse place than we are today. Yes. Thank goodness we have the independent media, which can actually, have some backbone and laugh at Peter Mandelson and not simply accept his PR guff.
Yeah, absolutely right. I could not agree with you more. People are asking if we can see, before we move on, your Keir Starmer impression, because they liked it so much the last time. So opportunities for you there.
I can't remember doing one. But I mean, this is Keir Starmer, as always, and he has no tonal intonation at all, and he doesn't get excited about anything. He just carries on doing an absolutely appalling job.
Yes, and telling us all how much he cares about Britain and how he wants to continue his way of changing the country. And I just know that everyone at the same time shouts out, "Stop changing the country. We don't want you to change the bloody country, you complete numpty." Something else that bothers me, and I know you were tweeting about this last night when it came out, the Daily Mail's front page, Greens plan to hand illegal migrants free house, a wage and free NHS care. So this is the latest nonsense and guff from Zach Polanski, you know, the man who thinks that he can increase the size of women's breasts just by looking at them. What on earth is going on? And why do people give this guy any credibility at all?
Well, for a start, Mike, let's just point out that this is also Labour policy.
Yes.
So one of the funniest things is that as the left splinters into many different parties, they nonetheless all seem to have exactly the same policy. And this, by the way, is exactly the same policy of the Democrats in the United States,
yes,
who during Mr. Trump's State of the Union refused to stand when Mr. Trump asked them to support a very simple proposition, which is that it is their job to look after citizens of the United States, not illegal migrants.
Yes.
That is something that would have been accepted as absolute truth by everybody across the political spectrum when I was a child. When I say that there are members of the Labour Party I respect, they are the ones who accept that as an absolute truth, that the duty of our country is to look after our citizens, who, by the way, Mike, are diverse already and have been for hundreds of years. Because if people are going to go down the ethno-nationalist route, I'm going to fight them on that, because we've been diverse for a very long time, but we're still us. And there is a difference between us and people who illegally come here. And people who illegally come here do not get, or should not get, free stuff. And if it's the policy of the Labour Party and the policy of the Green Party to just give free stuff to people who illegally come here, then one, they'll bankrupt us all. But two, they are just moral degenerates. That is absolutely betraying your nation. You know, our nation matters. We all matter. We all get up in the morning, some of us really early to go on things like this. And, you know, we make the packed lunches, we do the washing, we do the dry, we make the country work. We pick up litter, we get on the train, we act, you know, with politeness and manners and decency throughout the day. You know, we put our rubbish in the bin. This is what we do. We don't break into other people's nations and get free stuff. And human beings who break into other people's nations and then get free stuff are inherently bad people. And by the way, Mike, many of them go on to commit incredibly serious crime. So again, what on earth does the Green Party think it's doing? And I really hate this idea that they've gone full sectarian up in this by-election. And I really hate, because I've got British Pakistani friends, the idea that my friends would support the Green Party, who believe in all this nonsense, rather than want to live a nice life with laws and rules, want their children to succeed and do well at school. This idea is just absurd. It's immensely patronizing. But this is what the Green Party are. They don't care about the environment. It's obviously a lie now. They're just communists.
Yes, they really are. And I mean, as you say, we played it yesterday and we made the plank of the day for it, the Urdu message that went out in a foreign language in a British city in order to try and gauge the sort of the engagement, if you like, of a foreign community who have no interest in being part of Britain, who have no interest in what happens in Britain, don't want to be British, don't want to celebrate anything that is British. And quite frankly, I wonder why and whether these people who don't speak English should have a vote at all.
Well, that's a big constitutional question, and I think that's a matter for us all to have a deep think about. There was a very funny tweet by one of our leading Jewish journalists that he was looking forward to the video in Hebrew.
Yes.
And that, whilst that is very funny, I do think it's a part of intellectual reflection for us to think that actually don't Jews do this rather well, because they maintain their own inherent culture. You know, that's what British Jewish people do. They still have their Jewish identity, but they are very British and they are integrated and they are fully British. And that's what we should want for everybody. That is the solution. You know, so that everybody can have their, you know, differences, but that we are fundamentally one nation and one people who support each other. And actually, probably because the British Jewish community spends so much time being attacked and getting vile abuse, we maybe don't reflect that actually maybe they're the ones doing it right.
Yes, exactly right. A couple of other stories to mention on the front pages. This is one for you because of its involvement with the legal business. Ministers will launch blitz courts in the biggest shake-up of criminal justice in 50 years, which will also include the ditching of jury trials for many offences. This is according to Times journalist, legal editor Jonathan Ames. This is all part of David Lammy's kind of restructuring, if you like, of the collapsed judicial system in this country. I'm not sure really that anything can fix it at this moment. Are you?
Well, day after day after day, courts across the land are empty and not in use because the government is incompetent at its job. Largely, by the way, this is fundamentally a Tony Blair problem. So he took the courts out and he put them in this thing called an independent governmental body, and that runs itself, i.e. it's not accountable to anybody. It's not even accountable to whoever the Justice Secretary or the Lord Chancellor is right now. Labour's changed so much I can't even remember who's got what job. But it's not directly accountable to the minister. So that's why the court sit empty. And that's been a major part of the backlog. Another part of the backlog is that we don't appoint enough judges because, again, we've given that off to an independent body. And just so your viewers know, independent just means unaccountable. They don't answer to anybody. They just take the money. They sit there, they mumble, they mutter some words in a committee meeting, and then everything is, shelved off for the next month. It's not even active management. They're not even actively destroying the country. They're just incompetent.
Yes.
And this is what President Trump called a socialist state. He called it nasty and incompetent. And our state is nasty and incompetent. And we have a backlog because our state is incompetent. So we do not need to throw away our 800-year-old right to jury trials or have it taken away by the intellectual likes of David Lammy just because they are incompetent at their day job. And we really must resist jury trials. If we don't resist the stealing of jury trials, then we have become a weak and spineless race. We really have. We've become a country that is absolutely pathetic. 800 years we've had this. 800 years we've needed it. We need it now. Do not let them steal jury trials.
No.
There's also, Mike, just a side story, is the use of AI in courts. That is part of this two-tier nonsense. Believe you me, absolutely nobody in the Labour Party, absolutely nobody in the senior echelons of the British government and the blob will use the AI courts. It will only be used by ordinary people. And what they're doing is this patronising way in which ordinary people get a lesser service than anyone else. And the king should intervene on justice, because justice is fundamentally his job, and he should treat us all as one people, because we are all one people.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. What's interesting is I heard some statistics this morning, actually, about jury trials, that in fact jury trials are more likely to find the perpetrator or the accused guilty than judges are, because apparently when in judge-only cases, about 55% of people are found guilty, but in jury trials, it's more like 80%. And I think some people would think that that's a surprise, because they would like to think that actually juries are more willing, shall we say, to forgive individuals. But in fact, it turns out to be the complete opposite.
Well, I think the judges will just be lent on. So that's. I mean, it's one of the reasons I think the judges should reject this. I think they should refuse to sit without juries. I think what you'll get, Mike, is all sorts of political pressure. So when the prisons are full, I think they'll be lent on to find people not guilty. When the person before them is a mum on Twitter who happens to have a Conservative counsellor for a husband, I think they'll be lent on to find them guilty.